Hello everyone. Been a while since I've come back to the stream, but Modern Horizons 2 has piqued some interest in my brewing abilities. So I intend to brew some stuff up. This is one of the decks that I've been working on for the past few days. I ran it through 2 leagues a few nights ago, and I was 9-1 in those leagues. I was very impressed with a lot of the cards, the new cards out of Modern Horizons 2. This is obviously a Jund shell that's playing the new Tourach, Dauthi Voidwalker, and Ignoble Hierarch. We've got 3 new cards in those. And then a couple sideboard cards. I'm playing 1 random Sudden Edict. That came up a couple times. So, pretty impressed with this deck so far. I'm going to run it through a few leagues and see how it does onward. You'll notice that I'm playing 1 Back to Nature in my sideboard. This is mostly just because in the 2 leagues that I ran it through last time, I ran into Enchantress twice. So I expect to probably run into it at least 1 more time. So I'll have this 1 sideboard card as an option for them. Beyond that though, Dex feels super strong. Just a really solid Lurrus deck that gets to rebuy Bauble, rebuy Dauthi Voidwalker, and even kick Tourach from the graveyard. Super powerful interaction. Obviously late in the game, if you get to get Wrenn and Six going and put the ultimate into play, recycling Unearth, Kolaghan's command with Lurrus, and then rebuying the Wrenn and Six, all is just like this, probably the most powerful interaction that this deck has as far as just recycling everything from the graveyard. It makes it very difficult for your opponent to win if they don't interact with your graveyard. And then you're also just kind of a fair mid-rangey deck, so you can also just interact with their stuff. So let's run it through a league and see how it does. Alright, here we go. Round 1. I will show you my Lurrus. So, last time I ran this deck through a few leagues, like I said, I was 9-1. The only match that I ended up losing was to Burn, and it was just traditional Burn. It wasn't a prowess deck or anything like that. I've only got the 2 brutalities in the sideboard, so perhaps I should be sideboarding a few more cards, specifically for the Burn matchup. But I chose not to make too many changes today, just to kind of show off what I've seen so far. I'm gonna go ahead and grab a Blood Crypt. Inquisition my opponent. Cleansing Wildfire and 2 copies of Titania. Well, this is going to be a somewhat rough matchup. Hopefully if we can get a Tourach down before they can get a Titania down, they're not going to have the Titanias to get down, so that would be ideal. I'm going to go ahead and play a fetch land and then Thoughtseize him. Just take one of the Titanias, or if they drew a card that costs less than Titania, we'll take that. So the 4 cards they have left. Island, Titania, Valakut, Rogran Triome. I would imagine they're probably going to be cycling this Rogran Triome, but who knows? Oh, they played it out. You kind of want to focus the black mana sources in this deck. You play a lot of cards that are very black heavy. You're not playing Liliana of the Veil because you're wanting to play Lurrus, obviously, but you're still playing Dauthi Voidwalker, which is black pips, and Tourach, which has a black kicker. So you do want to focus grabbing black sources with your fetches as much as you can. The deck does play 1 Stomping Ground, but it's mostly just there as an option, not necessarily like the first land that you want to be grabbing. Okay, and ideally this... I'll go ahead and grab a Blood Crypt here. Why not? I think with this, I'm just gonna go ahead and grab a basic swamp, I think. I know that seems a little weird, but this lets us cast Kroxa, should we draw it. And then I'm gonna go ahead and kick this Tourach. The best part about this is that if we get the Titania out of his hand, which we did, now we can use Dauthi to cast the Titania, which I'm gonna go ahead and do. And I'll go ahead and grab back this fetch land. And then obviously now we have 14 power in play against his board of mostly nothing. So, in short, I've been very impressed with Tourach. Wonder if he's holding... Okay, so he's got a Teferi. This is somewhat bad for us. It's not the end of the world. We still get to fetch and make a 5/3. But it is somewhat awkward. Knowing if I had known that they were playing Teferi, I may not have made that play. But it's hard to say. Getting a free 5-mana creature is pretty good. A little bit awkward that we haven't drawn our Mishra's Bauble yet. We can't grab Lurrus, play Lurrus, and play a Bauble this turn. I think, given that they don't have a fetch land in their graveyard, I kind of just want to attack them and just hold up one Kolaghan's Command. Maybe I'm supposed to Kolaghan's Command. You know what? I think I'm supposed to Kolaghan's Command, grab back the Dauthi, play Dauthi, because if they have a fetch land and they play the Titania, although they don't have 2 green sources. It's definitely an interesting turn. I don't think I care about the Teferi, so I am just going to attack them, because this puts them dead in 2 to the Kolaghan's Command. Okay, so they bolted my elemental, which is not ideal, but that's okay. So I think I'm going to pick up Dauthi, make them discard. And you know what? I think I'm actually just going to go ahead and take the last card out of their hand as well. I'll just shock the Teferi and take the last card out of their hand. And And this puts another counter on the Tourach as well. So yeah, pretty powerful interaction there. Opponent's got no cards versus our 6/5 with Pro White. It's pretty relevant. They're trying to make me pick it up with the Teferi. What do I want for this matchup? Sudden Edict is a good answer to if they're playing a Primeval Titan deck. It's a good answer to Primeval Titan. It's also a good answer to Titania if you can get it before it gets the land out of the graveyard. It's not bad. Sudden Edict is okay there. I don't really necessarily think this is an Unearth matchup. Unearth is mostly there for grindy matchups, and even though they're playing like big dumb threats, I think this is not a deck that's focused on trying to remove my creatures, so I don't necessarily think that these are all that whoopee. We could bring in some number of Nile Spellbombs just as a way to like interact with the lands in their graveyard because they're trying to pick them back up with Titania. But like that's not super crazy. I suppose the question is, what do I not want in my deck? Lightning Bolt being able to answer Titania is pretty good. Also going face is also very good. We didn't see any 4 mana or less creatures. However, I have to imagine that they're probably playing Omnath in this 5-color, 4-color pile, whatever. I think I saw all 4 colors, not black. So it looks like an Omnath deck. So this would be an okay answer to Omnath. Abrupt Decay is kind of awkward. However, it is an answer to Little Teferi and Dryad of the Elysian Grove, but I think with those being the only 2 targets and Fatal Push covering more bases as far as like killing Dryad as well as Omnath and any other little dorky creatures, the tokens from Titania, I think Fatal Push is a better removal spell. It also just kills like Elvish Reclaimer if they have that in their deck. So I think something like this is probably okay. 1 Spellbomb, 1 Sudden Edict. Yeah, I think I'm okay with this. Somewhat interesting that you know, you could obviously bring in Back to Nature against this deck if you are expecting them to be on Dryad of the Elysian Grove. It just being like a 1-for-1 enchantment spot removal is like pretty okay. It doesn't target obviously, so like, you know, if they have anything cute with like, I don't know, Sajiri Step or something like that with Elvish Reclaimer trying to protect the Dryad, they can't do that with Back to Nature being the answer of choice. Also, if they just play 2 Dryads, you just get a random 2-for-1, which could be decent. I'm not going to choose to board them in this particular matchup, but I don't think I'm gonna Bauble myself. I think I'm fetching either way because I want to get some of these fetch lands out of my hand. I'm gonna grab a Blood Crypt, and then I'm going to Bauble my opponent to get a little bit more information. They're drawing a Breeding Pool, and I'll go ahead and Inquisition them. I don't care about Rip Apart, and I don't really care about Lightning Bolt too much, aside from the fact that I guess Lightning Bolt, I don't know. They're about the same. They both deal damage to Planeswalkers, and like my Wrenn and Six is the only threat that I have right now. So I'm just going to take the... Actually, they don't have a white mana yet. So I'm going to take the Bolt definitively, just because they actually cannot cast the Rip Apart. And then Thoughtseize is a pretty decent draw there. I think I'm gonna go ahead and makes it a little awkward, but I'm gonna go ahead and just grab a yeah, I'll go ahead and grab an Overgrown Tomb. I'm okay with taking damage in this matchup. They're not super aggressive. It is a little bit awkward if you put yourself in range of Valakut triggers, but I want to get this Wrenn and Six going. Next turn, my intention is to fire off some number of these discard spells. Playing a Breeding Pool, most likely tapped, so their hand is these 3 knowns and then 1 unknown. Tourach is a good draw. It's a threat alongside just being another discard spell. I'm gonna go ahead and Inquisition them to start. We'll take the Rip Apart, most likely. Ooh, they drew a Valky. Suppose they didn't want to play the Valky into my Wrenn and Six, but I think I'm just going to take all of their cards here. We'll just grab a basic swamp with the Verdant Catacombs. So, yeah. So that leaves them with an island, which they just played. And now we can just go grab another basic swamp. And cast this with Kicker. Just take the last card out of their hand. Sigarda. Opponent's going deep on the 5-mana creatures. Spells and abilities your opponent's controller can't cause you to sacrifice permanents, so I suppose they're expecting me to have Liliana of the Veil. But I'm playing a Lurrus deck, sir. I mean, I suppose, like, I'm still playing Sudden Edict, so like, there's that to be said, but it's not exactly a common card you would see. Well, obviously I want to take this off the table, but I don't know that I'm going to get the opportunity to do so, so I'm going to go ahead and cycle this Peatland, just trying to draw a card, and then I'll probably just pick up Lurrus. If I draw Bolt, changes my plan slightly. Just pick up the Peatland. Go ahead and pick up Lurrus. And then I'll cast the Bauble. And I think I will... Yeah, I'll go ahead and target them. If they want me to not know about this card, they need to crack the Reclaimer in their upkeep. But they actually can't cast the Omnath right now, which is fantastic for us. So I am extremely hoping that they don't actually crack the Reclaimer. Oh wait, that draws a concession. So yeah, my opponent's deck was kind of rinky-dinky. They had too many mana pips and not great mana fixing. I don't know. I guess it really looked like they weren't really playing enough fetch lands. I just saw a lot of shock lands and a lot of triomes. But you know, I don't know. Maybe perhaps they just had a really poor draw. I don't know. But I saw like multiple triomes. They had 2 Rogran triomes and a Ketria triome in game 1, and it's just like you don't need that many triomes. You just need more fetch lands. You need like 1 of each triome and more fetch lands, usually, to fix those mana bases. But anyways, Titania is a cool card. I've been impressed with Titania in the modern format. It's seen a very small amount of play in Legacy, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the Legacy format. Typically 5-mana cards don't get played in Legacy, nor in Modern for that matter, but when it's a green card, there's an exception, because like the cap-in for Modern, you know, playable green cards is a 6-mana 6/6 with the text of Primeval Titan on it. So, you know, having a 5-mana option that does something similar and also puts a bunch of power into play is pretty cool. You know, it just helps you put more mana into play, which I think is a good alternative. I definitely think that the Amulet Titan decks, perhaps even like the Valakut decks may adopt Titanium. I think the Omnath decks might go that route, but Omnath is so powerful by itself. I don't know if you really need another threat. I suppose the most powerful thing that you can be doing with Omnath is typically to Omnath fetch land and then use the mana that you get from the fetch land and Omnath to then cast a 5-mana card. So Titania slots pretty well there. Ooh. This one's definitely interesting. Because if they have a removal spell for one of my Ignoble Hierarchs, my hand gets worse. But if I draw a land in the top 2, I've got about like 2 draw steps for this hand to be, you know, reasonable. I think I'm going to keep this hand. We're going to fetch an Overgrown Tomb on turn 1. It's a good draw, obviously. So my mana base previously included 2 copies of Overgrown Tomb, and I'm now playing 2 copies of Blood Crypt, mostly just because I feel like Overgrown Tomb is not as necessary. Trail of Crumbs. Well, this is an Eldraine card. This makes me think that they're playing some of the new food synergies. Enters battlefield, create a food token. Whenever you sack foods, you may place pay 1. Okay, so this is a grindy deck for sure. I would presume. I think I'll go start with Inquisition. Okay, Witch's Oven and some not so great lands. I think I'm actually going to lead on Bloodstained Mire. Okay. I mismapped this turn slightly. When I saw the Yavimaya in my head, it was in play. So I was going to play the Bloodstained Mire and tap that for green, but I just blanked there for a moment. It's okay, we'll grab a Stomping Ground, and we still have double black off of these. We're not going to get the Tourach next turn, unfortunately, because of how I sequenced that turn, but... shouldn't be a huge deal. We still have stuff to do with our mana. You want to pick up Lurrus this turn and attack for 1. Urza, okay. Abrupt Decay is not quite good enough, unfortunately. I think I'm going to lead on Lurrus and then rebuy the Ignoble Hierarch, and that at least lets us develop our mana slightly. And the following turn, I'm hoping to draw into another land, or, yeah, no, I mean, a land would be ideal. So if we draw into a land, we can cast both Kolaghan's commands, shatter some artifacts, and deal 4 damage to the Urza. It does look like my opponent is digging with the Trail of Crumbs, which is fine by me. They found an Academy Manufacturer. Okay, so that's what deck we're playing against. Our Kolaghan's commands are going to be great in this matchup, for obvious reasons. That is okay. We have Kolaghan's commands. Rebuy that. Still just need a mana source. Okay, it's not exactly the mana source we wanted, but I will take it. It does mean that we can play Ignoble Hierarch and Tourach this turn to take the last 2 cards out of their hand. Which I'm about. Take the Academy Manufacturer and the Witch's Oven. And then it's basically... Okay, so they drew land, so they've got the ability to spin Urza and not have to use the construct for mana. A Gingerbread Cabin, that is a powerful effect with Yavimaya. Okay, interesting that they're digging. rather than spinning with Urza. I suppose this lets you actually filter. You get to look at the top two and put one in your hand. They grabbed a goose. Just means more mana, more permanents. But this next turn is going to be pretty good for us, I would think. Get to kill their Urza. We do need to take the Trail of Crumbs off of the battlefield, but we can yeah, here in a little bit. I think I'm actually more interested in just playing Dauthi and Abrupt Decaying the Trail of Crumbs this turn, because after seeing how my opponent's deck really works with this card last turn, they're going to get to make another food. They crack 2 foods. I mean, they don't technically have enough mana. They get to crack 1 food and then filter, but they still get to make a food, and that just kind of pulls them ahead on cards and mana. Whereas Urza just kind of flips the top card and they have to, you know, fingers crossed they get to cast it, or, you know, it's a land, something like that. It's not a great sequence of events for us. Perhaps we're just supposed to kill the Urza. I could go Shock Urza, Shatter the food, Shock Urza, Shatter the construct. And then they have to spend their whole turn making a food, cracking it, and then using Trail of Crumbs to put a card in their hand. And I think I'm okay with that. So I think we'll start there. And I don't actually think I'm going to kill the construct. I think I'm actually just going to pick up Lurrus. So let's go grab a swamp. And this is basically an Overgrown Tomb here. So destroy target artifact, deal 2 damage. So we're going to destroy the food, 2 damage at Urza. And then we're going to return, deal 2 damage. Okay. And I'm going to attack with my mini exalted Tourach. That is quite good for them. Definitely need to kill that one. And I am just absolutely hoping that... Okay, so they are choosing to make the food. Yeah, and this is going to be huge. Okay, I did not think about the fact that that was going to be huge, but that's okay. I think we've drawn a sufficient amount of removal spells sort of buy ourselves back into this game. So how do we want to do this? We definitely have to kill the manufacturer, and then we probably kill the construct. And we'll start with Dauthi, just so these get exiled. So green, black. Okay, the manufacturer. And then fatal push the construct. We'll attack for 7. That's a really good draw. I don't know that it's quick enough, but it's definitely a good one. Now they can tap their Clue and their Blooming Marsh to make 2 mana and activate the Goose, which makes another food. And then it's basically a 5/5. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know exactly what the best route is there for them. Okay. Oh, okay. All right, this line makes sense. tap the food for mana, sack it to the goose to make a mana, and then use that mana to then Trail of Crumbs. Draw a card with the clue. Looks like they just found a breeding pool off of the Trail of Crumbs. So their hand is breeding pool, one unknown. Okay, and they conceded. Well, we don't have a ton of ways to interact with artifacts out of the sideboard. So I do think I want the one Sudden Edict as another way to answer Urza. And obviously, like if you can't catch it with the trigger on the stack, then you can Fatal Push the token and then catch it with the, catch the Urza. It is a little bit awkward sometimes when they have a bunch of dorky creatures in the way, but I think it's worth bringing in. I don't think there's much need for Spellbomb. I didn't see Emery in their deck. It doesn't look like an Emery deck. It looks more like an Academy Manufacturer Gingerbread Cabin deck, which is pretty sweet. I definitely had this a deck idea whenever I saw the Academy Manufacturer spoiled. So I think we bring in Sudden Edict, and then what are we taking out? Fatal Push seems like our best removal spell. It kills basically everything in their deck. It's perhaps a Lightning Bolt. I think that's fine. So these cards are kind of whatever in this matchup. It's really hard to build an appropriate sideboard when the metagame is kind of all over the place. So I am getting punished for registering 2 Blood Crypts in this list, as opposed to the 2 Overgrown Tombs that I was previously registering. I still think it's correct to keep this hand because we do have a turn 1 removal spell, turn 2 removal spell, and Kroxa. So we get to kill any number of Goose and potentially an Urza. Obviously Urza being 4 mana, Academy Manufacturer. I still think this hand is a keep, but this is definitely an awkward one. Blooming Marsh and Goose. This card's so good. Bolt the Goose. Bolt the birdie. Another Goose. Are we light on mana? Okay, no. Not light on mana. We are going to be bolting that Goose, though, too. Eat him out of here. We could obviously spend our next turn picking up Lurrus. Ideally, we draw a green fetch land, and then we can Kroxa plus Ignoble Hierarch. And then the following turn, we can pick up Lurrus and kill something. Yeah, it's a little bit awkward, but Mishra's Bauble is a very good draw there. So let's Bauble them to start. Another Academy of Manufacturer on top. Definitely killing this one. And then I think I'll go ahead and Kroxa. They discarded a Karn, the Great Creator. Okay, Bolt's not a bad draw for the second Manufacturer. Yep. Green fetch land. Tourach. Okay. Just gonna buy Lurrus. then next turn we can play Lurrus and play Bauble, start drawing 2 cards a turn. Lonus Cryptozoologist. Whatever this card's name is. Oh, that's a good draw. They do have 2 cards in hand, so I think I am going to go ahead and take them. Get them out of there. Okay. Was kind of expecting one of them to be a removal spell for the Tourach, but that's okay. Yep. Attack for 1. Okay, drew a land. This is the turn where we get to play Lurrus, play a Bauble, look at the top card of their deck. And also cast an Ignoble Hierarch. I suppose alternatively, we could hold up Abrupt Decay depending on what they're drawing. They're drawing a Gingerbread Cabin. Abrupt Decay is not necessary for that card. So we will just play out our stuff. And now we're firmly in the driver's seat of this game. We get to look at the top card of their deck every single turn, and we're going to get to put a Kroxa into play next turn. Okay, Misty. Not a good draw for them. We're going to go ahead and exile most of these removal spells. I was not originally playing Kroxa in my deck. Okay, I'm just reminding myself, I think this just sacks clues and interacts with clues, but there's nothing it can do with these foods, so I'm going to go ahead and attack for 4. Okay, they're choosing to gain some life. Makes sense. They're probably gonna die relatively quickly to the Kroxa. Although they may concede after drawing Misty. And they did in fact concede. Okay. 2040. So far with this Lurrus Jund decked. I definitely think there's something there that my opponent is brewing upon. With the Urza Academy Manufacturer Gilded Goose deck. I don't think that Trail of Crumbs is a playable modern card. It's really mana hungry and doesn't provide a lot of value. And I don't think that... I don't think the deck needs to go in the direction of Lonus Cryptologist. You don't really need to make clues. I think there is a Lonus Cryptologist, whatever that card's name is. I think there is a deck that includes that card. It is a very powerful effect if you just play like Mana Dorks and like Collected Companies and, you know, maybe some Tireless Trackers or something like that, and then like permission spells. Something in that vein seems pretty powerful. That card just making clues every turn seems really good. And then obviously having an ability if you just go way over the top on clues. Yeah, this hand's okay. It's not fantastic or anything. It's got 3 2-drops and a removal spell. But we'll go ahead and keep it. And I think on turn 1, I'll go ahead and Bauble myself to see what the top card of my library is. It is a Verdant Catacombs. Do I want a 3rd land? I don't suppose there's any reason why I wouldn't want a 3rd land. I am going to eventually want to kick this Tourach, so I'll go ahead and draw that. Eldrazi Temple. Okay, so Jund versus Eldrazi was historically a very bad matchup for the Jund side. It's not always the case because, you know, sometimes they play Death Shadows and Death Shadows are way bigger than Eldrazi's. But It'll be interesting to see how this particular matchup plays out now that we have access to some very powerful cards. The question is, what do I want to play this turn? Because Dauthi is powerful, being a 3/2 unblockable creature. It also just says that like any removal spells that we draw, anything like that, any discard spells that we draw are effectively like cast target Eldrazi from my opponent's hand, which is obviously quite good. I almost want to just leave up the fetch land and Fatal Push this turn because it feels like they're going to play a turn 2 Thought-Knot Seer, so I'm afraid they're going to take one of my cards away. And I'm like okay with them taking one of these. Just the question is, which one do I want them not to take? I think the answer is Tarmogoyf. So I'm going to go ahead and play out the Goyf. I do think that Tarmogoyf can very easily get bigger than the Thought-Knot Seer. And I think if they play the Thought-Knot Seer this turn and see Fatal Push fetch land, they kind of have to take the Fatal Push. So. Okay. Did not have turn 2 Thought-Knot Seer. The Chalice is in fact a Chalice. I still use the Fatal Push, just to put an extra card type in the graveyard at some point. Question now is, do I want to buy back Lurrus, or do I want to just jam my Dauthi in play? And I think the answer is jamming Dauthi, because next turn I'm going to play Tourach anyways, so I'm not going to find a spot to play the Lurrus. So I'm going to go ahead and play Dauthi. Just get in for 2. I still think... no, actually, I forgot, yeah. No, they don't have to take the Fatal Push anymore, because Chalice is in play. Guess they're just reading this card, I don't know. Dauthi has been very powerful in this deck. Very, very powerful. It is a tad bit awkward here that Dauthi is going to exile the remaining cards that would normally feed the Tarmogoyf. A little bit of a nombo, but it's not a huge one. Likely going to get Thought-Knot Seared than my Tourach. And then we are definitely behind. Nope. I think I'm going to go ahead and attack for 3. This card can't block, so. It is looking somewhat poor. This Chalice of the Void is very powerful against us. We need to draw... we need to draw... a Kolaghan's Command or an Abrupt Decay to answer this. So we've got 4 outs in our deck. Sideboard does get slightly better. We get the 4 Cleansing Wildfires. Just not like absurd, but it's okay. Sudden Edict is very good against this deck. Well, assuming they don't have a Mana Reshaper in play. Normally, this dyssynergy is not a huge concern. But right now in this game, it does feel like it is slightly affecting us. If I were to draw a discard spell exactly, well, okay. The Chalice again, obviously Chalice checking me. But let's assume that I drew like a Kolaghan's Command or something. Kolaghan's Command shattering the Chalice and making them discard a card. Normally I would get to pump the Goyf from that, but the Dauthi exiling those cards does make it a tad bit awkward. Reality Smasher is very, very good for them. We need this Goyf to get big and big quick. So interestingly enough, I could cast my Fatal Push on the Reality Smasher, which will trigger its ability to counter the spell, and then I could discard Lurrus. There would then be 4 card types in the graveyard, at which point I can eat the Thought-Knot Seer, and my Tarmogoyf is a 4/5. I actually think that is the correct line. As good as Lurrus is going to be, I don't think I can take this hit. Obviously, if we draw a Kolaghan's Command, buying back the Lurrus will be fine. You just gotta put these on the stack, brother. Just click on one of them. That's very good for us. That's also good for us. So I think now I am going to go ahead and cash in the Dauthi for the Thought-Knot Seer. And just take a look at their hand. So they do have some big boys. They can't cast Ugin for 2 more turns, so I think I'm going to go ahead and take the Karn. Maybe not. I don't really care like too much about what Karn gets. Like if he gets a bridge, it's like whatever, I could just shatter it or Abrupt Decay it. If he gets a Worm Coil Engine, that's probably like worst case scenario for me, but Kolaghan's Command can eventually, you know, take that from their hand and make them discard it. I'm not too sure. Huh. It's definitely an interesting turn. Taking Karn means they don't have a play next turn. Taking Ugin means that Ugin's worse for us. It does get to like kill the Tarmogoyf. No, I mean it's probably the Karn. It's probably the Karn. I think I talked myself into that because even if he plays Ugin and he spends his whole turn just killing the Tarmogoyf, like I'm pretty okay with that if I'm using this Kolaghan's Command to buy back the Lurrus, because then I can just play Lurrus and then play the Tarmogoyf. The remaining 3 cards in hand are Ugin, Waste, Cavern. They played their Wastes. It's like a Eldrazi of some kind. They drew a Thought-Knot Seer. It's pretty good for them. So I think here I'm going to let the Thought-Knot Seer resolve, let the triggered ability go onto the stack, and then I will Kolaghan's Command to shatter the Chalice and deal 2 damage to the Thought-Knot Seer, and then I'll bolt the Thought-Knot Seer, and then they'll be left to take my Abrupt Decay or whatever card I draw, and then this Tarmogoyf is 5/6. It's definitely really awkward for us because I really wanted this Kolaghan's Command to be able to buy back Lurrus, but it doesn't look like we're going to get the opportunity to do that this game. So we're going to destroy target artifact, deal 2 damage to the Thought Knot. And then we will bolt Thought Knot. Okay. Dauthi or Abrupt Decay. Oh no, wait. In my head, this was becoming a 5/6 because we were blowing up an artifact, but there's already an artifact in the graveyard. My bad. I think that's okay. You can still double block the Reality Smasher. Choosing not to attack. Yeah, that's not very good for us. I think I am casting it though, because frankly, it doesn't do much else, but it does pump the Goyf. So I think I'm in. Yeah, we'll go ahead and attack. Feels like they're probably playing Ugin and blowing up my Goyf this turn anyways, so I kind of just want to get my 5 damage in. And if he just plays Ugin and makes a 2/2 with the intent to block with the 2/2, I think that's not bad for us either. We can just Abrupt Decay the 2/2 and then attack with the Tarmogoyf. It really does hinge on whether or not he leaves the Reality Smasher back to block. Yeah, I think the one deciding factor this game had was the fact that he drew the second Thought Knot off the top. I think we were probably winning this game if we got to use Kolaghan's Command to rebuy Lurrus, but given that we did not, I think we are behind. Okay. It did in fact destroy my Tarmogoyf. So if we draw another Kolaghan's Command here, we're still in it, but not unless. I'm gonna go ahead and concede to drawing basic forest. Okay, in come the wildfires and the edict, I think. And I think that's kind of it. I don't really think I want any of these other cards. Inquisition's not great. Most of their cards, their 4 CMC or greater. So I think this is a clean swap for the Cleansing Wildfires. And then what do I want over the sudden, or for the sudden edict? Probably just the bolt. Yep, Fatal Push kills Tarmogoyf, or Thought Knots here rather. And the Matter Reshapers if absolutely necessary. Tourach was also very good in that game if we had gotten to cast it. It just would have been like a 4/3 and it would have taken some of my opponent's cards when they were on like 5 cards in hand. And it just being random is very powerful. Yeah, this plan is pretty good. It gets to play a turn 3 Tourach kicked with a Kroxa too. So we're gonna get to effectively take away 3 of their cards, 2 of them being random. I know it seems a little bit weird to be playing Ignoble Hierarch alongside mostly like 2-drop creatures. That's not a bad draw. It's not a great one, but it's not a bad one. So red, black, Kroxa. Kroxa is also pretty good in this matchup if we get to put it in play. Anyways, I was saying, I know it seems a little bit weird to be playing Ignoble Hierarch in a shell that's mostly 2-mana creatures. But I definitely think that Ignoble Hierarch is extremely powerful in this deck. Being able to cast Tourach with Kicker on turn 3 is very powerful. And then also just like making your Nurturing Peatlands slightly less awkward in the late game with Wrenn and Six, because you just have extra mana sitting on the table. You just get to spend a mana to discard, or spend a mana to sack the Peatland. This card's fine. I think I'm actually going to go ahead and lead on Fatal Pushing this Ballista because I don't want them to kill my Tourach in response. And then it's fine if he kills my Hierarch. There's one awkward thing about Tourach in general is the fact that even though he is effectively a 4/3 creature, with, you know, him to Tourach stapled to him, he actually doesn't get the counters until they discard cards, which is both an upside and a downside, right? Because if you make them discard more cards, then he gets more counters. But he doesn't enter, like there's other cards with Kicker that, you know, like this card enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter when you kick it, that kind of thing. So the interaction between something like Walking Ballista and Tourach is a little bit awkward, where like you have to play Tourach with Kicker, he enters as a 2/1, and then they discard the cards and he gets the +1/+1 counters. And in response, they can obviously use the Walking Ballista to take the Tourach off the battlefield. Expedition map. It kind of feels like they don't have any other cards. What is this, like a Dismember? Okay. Feels like a Dismember. I'm gonna attack. I'm gonna start with an attack. Okay. Chose not to dismember my Tourach. I'm pretty sure it's a dismember based on how they tapped. They didn't pay any life for it, but it definitely felt like a dismember. I don't know. I think they're mostly just afraid of me putting Kroxa back into play this turn. And like, I think I agree with them. Like that seems pretty powerful. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna lead on Thoughtseize. It was an Ugin. It's not even close to a dismember. Okay. Probably gonna use map to go grab tower, and then they have Tron, which is like moderately concerning, but they get to play the tower, and then assuming they didn't draw exactly like Matter Reshaper or something, they don't get to cast the card in their hand, so we're gonna get to go play Lurrus and then play Kroxa from our graveyard, which puts a +1/+1 counter on the Tourach, and then we attack for 7. So it looks pretty good this game. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and just follow through on that line. As I said, they hadn't changed anything. We're just going to play the Kroxa for the front half. So the absolute worst card they could draw here for us would be All Is Dust. And I think we're still in good shape, even if they All Is Dust us. Like, I still think we're in a winning position for this game if they draw All Is Dust, because we have the Kroxa in the graveyard. So even if they draw their best possible, I still think we're probably winning this game. I mean, that's a pretty decent draw. This lets them draw a card into, like, Thought Knotting this turn, but if they don't draw a card, then they're just dead. Just dead to the board. Okay. Yeah, I'm just gonna run it back. I don't think there's any reason to bring in any of these other cards. This hand's not great, but I think I'm gonna keep it off the back of turn 2 Wildfire. I would feel better about this hand if we had a turn 1 Ignoble. I do like that. That's a good card. So there's a couple things my opponent could do. The fact that they played Eldrazi Temple, it's a little bit of a toss-up. It feels like they could play Chalice on 1. Which it looks like that's what they're deciding to do. Okay. Now the consideration is, do I want to Abrupt Decay their Expedition map to take them off of finding another mana source? Or do I just want to put Wrenn and Six into play? I think I am grabbing an Overgrown Tomb either way. Let's see what we draw. Drew a Thoughtseize. I think given that we drew Thoughtseize, I want to save the Abrupt Decay for the Chalice. So I think I'm just going to go ahead and play the Wrenn and Six. And just start picking up lands. This card being able to retrace Abrupt Decay later on can be quite good. Also, just if they resolve a Thought-Knot Seer next turn, they can't take both of my Tourachs, so. And putting Wrenn and Six into play this turn does put it out of Thought-Knot Seer combat range next turn. So we get to keep it in play for another 2 turns. I think worst case scenario for us right here is if they have exactly Temple Reality Smasher. But still not in too bad shape even if they do that. Okay, just play a Cavern. No follow-up. It's a tad bit awkward. Our mana situation, I can't decay the Chalice and Thoughtseize them this turn. So I think I'm going to go grab a basic Swamp with this Bloodstained Mire. And then just Wildfire the Temple. Okay, so he did in fact grab an Urza's Land, which is good and bad for me. Good in the sense that this next turn, when I think I'm just gonna discard this basic swamp here to hand size. This next turn, he doesn't have 5 mana for a Reality Smasher. He's only gonna have 4 mana because he chose not to get an Eldrazi Temple. So, Urza's Tower. Not too sure what this is. Karn. Okay. Karn the Great Creator. Sure. Okay, what are we getting? Perhaps an Ensnaring Bridge. Maybe a Sorcerer's Spyglass for my Wrenn and Six. Crucible of Worlds. Oh, wait. It's not one you normally see in their sideboards. I'm gonna go ahead and grab a swamp out of the graveyard and just cast this Tourach with the kicker. And we got the Crucible and a Relic. Relic obviously not being super relevant here, simply because there's a Chalice in play. The Karn is going to get to draw another card here. My hope is that they boarded in 3 copies of Relic and they were holding multiples in their hand. Kind of feels like they've got like 6 mana Ugin in their hand though, and maybe an Allah's Dust. They definitely haven't really done much this whole game. Okay, Sorcerer's Spyglass shows them my hand, and we don't get to Wrenn and Six anymore, but I think that's okay, because... yeah, I'm not too sure what I'm going to do this next turn, but it's definitely close. So I could Abrupt Decay the Sorcerer's Spyglass. And then uptick Wrenn and Six. Or I could just kick Tourach and take 2 of their remaining 3 cards. I think I'm going to do that if they choose to play out something. If they play out like some random card, like another Chalice on 1, I would have kicked Tourach for sure. Yeah, this hand is, this is close, I think. I think I am going to go ahead and take the resources away, though. I think I'm going to kick Tourach. We're going to keep this one. Which means when they discard these next 2 cards, we're going to get 2 more +1/+1 counters. And that was quite good for us. We took a 6-drop and a 7-drop, so if they had gotten to resolve either one of those, we probably would have been losing this game. And I am going to go ahead and kill the Karn Great Creator while they have the opportunity to do so. And then once again, their best draw is a Reality Smasher or a Thought-Knot Seer, and I don't think that it's good enough to beat the Tourach anymore. Obviously, Reality Smasher trades with the Tourach, but I have the Sudden Edict. So this is somewhat of an interesting interaction. I think next turn, I'm probably going to spend my mana on a few of these cards, and I'm also going to focus on buying back Lurrus, because if I get the opportunity to play Lurrus and then kick Tourach from the graveyard, this sort of like cycle of Tourach into Tourach into Tourach is going to get out of hand for them, and they're not going to have enough resources to deal with what I just have in play. But the Thoughtness here is a good one. Like I said, I think that one's probably, they're close to their best draw. They're probably forced into taking the Sudden Edict. Actually, no, it's probably the Abrupt Decay, because if they don't take Abrupt Decay, you get to Abrupt Decay the Chalice, fetch, and then Fatal Push the Thoughtness here. So we still have a line because we have a Sudden Edict. I'm gonna go ahead and buy back Lurrus. And then attack for 6. I'm not entirely sure if Sudden Edict is like good yet. It's definitely the best Edict effect they've printed in Modern, or in any format for that matter, in a while. I think it's arguable whether or not it's better than Liliana's, whatever the Liliana's Edict thing. I can't remember the name of it, but it's the one that like each opponent sacrifices a creature. If you control a Liliana Planeswalker, they have to discard a card as well. Tourach is great here. So I'm going to start on that. I could have played Lurrus into Tourach, but I think I want to take the remaining 2 cards out of their hand and then line that up for next turn, because if they have a Dismember or anything for the Lurrus, it's kind of awkward. I just would rather just spin the 4 mana Hymn to Tourach. All right, won that one. Moving on to the next game. So we're 3-0, 6-1 on games. I'm sorry, 5-1 on games. No, yeah, 6-1 on games. I was right. 6-1 on games. The deck looks impressive. I think this is pretty good. I would play this over traditional Jund. I think this list is way more powerful, just being able to Tourach your opponent and recycle that with Lurrus, Kroxa, Tarmogoyf. Like, all of it's so much better. Obviously, I haven't run into too much graveyard interaction, but I mean, like, my opponent in that last game had a Relic of Primogenitus and couldn't cast it because they had a Chalice on one. So, like, in a scenario where they get to cast that Relic, that game might be different because I don't have as much synergies with my Lurrus and Baubles and, you know, all that stuff doing crazy shenanigans. Relic is not one of the better removal spell or better ways to interact with my graveyard. Mostly just because, well, I mean, I say it's not, but it kind of is. It is and it isn't, right? Because like, if I cast the Lurrus, they either crack the Relic and then like spend their turn then, and you know, like my graveyard's gone, like so be it. But then like if I have a Bauble, I get to follow up with Bauble and then Bauble you, Bauble from the graveyard, Bauble you, you know, like something like that, and draw an extra couple cards. So it's not like the most ideal, but neither is something like Rest in Peace for this deck. Because like Rest in Peace obviously like does it all at once and then does it for the remainder of the game. But you know, Rest in Peace sits in play, and if I have any way to interact it with an Abrupt Decay, then it just falls apart relatively quickly. Yeah, this hand's good. I'm gonna keep this. Let's go turn 2 Wrenn and Six. Turn 3 Kroxa. May just buy back Lurrus instead. I don't know. We'll see. Which kind of depends on what my opponent does. Mountain. Swift Spear. Okay. This is going to be bad for us. So I'm going to start on, I think, grabbing an Overgrown Tomb with this. And I'm just going to grab it tapped. And that gives me the option of playing Dauthi Voidwalker or Abrupt Decay next turn. And I definitely think I'm probably leading on Abrupt Decay. Hopefully no land pre-combat means they don't have a land for this turn. Okay, well, they have the land for the turn. And they have the Eidolon. It's very bad for us. Okay, grab an Overgrown Tomb. And we are going to Abrupt Decay the Eidolon. Not really a ton of reason to not do it there, but, you know, just use our mana. Helix me. So, one thing to consider is, if we had played Dauthi that turn, he probably points the Helix at the Dauthi. It is a little bit awkward because it has Shadow and it can't block, you know, these creatures. But it's definitely something to consider because if you play Dauthi, and he casts something like a Lightning Helix, specifically the card Lightning Helix, then it gets exiled and you get a Void counter on it. So then you can cast the Lightning Helix later. Lightning Helix is obviously an absurd removal spell against burn. So even though we don't have a ton of like actual gain life cards in our deck and in our sideboard, Dauthi, it kind of plays this weird middle game. Searing Blaze is absurd here. I don't think we're winning this one, boys. Yeah. And we're going to 1 here. Okay, we're going to take the last card out of their hand. Just for a little bit of information. And we're going to Bauble the top of their deck for a little bit of information. Okay. So I'll be the first to admit that I definitely think that I need to tune the sideboard slightly more. It's possible that, you know, like the 2 Unearths is kind of cute. It's been pretty good against like removal heavy decks, obviously. So in those spots it is quite powerful. But it's specifically against burn. I think this deck is not built to beat burn in the main deck or in the sideboard. Really the only creature that you have that gains any life is Lurrus, and that's not realistically a way to beat burn. So we're looking for like a fast Tarmogoyf hand. I almost want to keep this just because it has 2 fatal pushes. Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to keep this hand. I don't think it gets much better than having 2 1-mana removal spells and a land that casts them. So we're going to bauble ourselves. No, there's no reason to bauble ourselves. Let's bauble them. They do have a Goblin Guide on top, so I think that means we're supposed to shock this in. Collective Brutality, that's pretty good. Okay. It's a very minor consideration to potentially just leave the Goblin Guide in play because it technically draws us an extra card if it's a land, but it's very, very minor. Okay. If we lose this one, it's definitely on me. Okay. Yep, that's not what we wanted to see. I'm gonna discard this Kolaghan's command. Nah. Maybe it's supposed to be the Ignoble Hierarch. Not sure. We'll discard Ignoble Hierarch. It definitely feels like they might have a couple Searing Blazes in their hand, so I don't want to just put out a stupid creature just for them to Searing Blaze. Okay. Give me a land, boy. No dice. The problem is like, if we had all this and just one Tarmogoyf in play, we're probably like able to win this game, but we just can't race. We just don't have any cards that race what they're doing. Skewer, get another burn spell. Okay. No other burn spell. Or are they just baiting me? I'm gonna go ahead and concede. I don't think there's any way for us to win this, even if I had drawn the second land right there. Like the best I can do is Collective Brutality. We weren't hitting the land for another few more turns, so maybe I wasn't supposed to keep that hand, but it's kind of a poor matchup anyways. The deck's not built to beat burn in any form or facet. It's not a particularly popular deck on Magic Online right now. Most people that have access to the new cards are playing something new. So, you know, it is what it is. I'll be honest, I'm not too sure how I would fix the burn matchup. I don't think I want to play Scavenging Ooze in a deck like this. I don't want to be like super green heavy. You could play more Collective Brutalities. That card's always very good against burn. Collective Brutality and Wrenn and Six is usually, you know, they pair pretty well together. So not too sure, but may have to you know, take another look at that one. Let me start with this. Bauble you. They have a Calming Garden on top. I will. Okay. I'll take the Explorer. I mean, they can't cast it either way, but I'll take the Explorer anyways. Okay, and then I'm going to set a stop in my opponent's draw step. Doesn't matter a ton, I suppose, because they're not going to really play anything, but let's just go ahead and take a look at what the top card of their deck is. They have a Through the Breach on top. Okay. Call in the garden. Draw an extra card. Dismiss all this, and then let's fetch for just a swamp. I think is fine. We're gonna play out a just start on Inquisition. Take the Dryad, and then play an Ignoble Hierarch. Pass the turn, and then next turn we get to kick a Tourach. Play a Growth Chamber, pick up Colony Garden. So their hand is these three cards, Colony Garden and Through the Breach. Go ahead and kick Tourach. They discard Through the Breach, Simic Growth Chamber. So they're left on Cavern Emrakul Unknown. I think I will go ahead and Thoughtseize them, and then we'll probably pick up Lurrus this turn as well. They're holding 2 Emrakuls. We'll take 1. Their hand is Cavern Emrakul. I think given that their hand is Cavern Emrakul, I think I'm going to go ahead and Kolaghan's command to kill one of the plants. And take a card out of their hand. That way, if they draw exactly through the breach, they can't cast it next turn. That's one of the only ways I'm losing this game. Okay, and they actually chose to discard the Emrakul. So they are interested more in playing the Cavern out. Let's grab a Blood Crypt. Man, this matchup is going to be really sweet if I get to go Dauthi into a discard spell, take an Emrakul. I just hope that that happens. Okay, so their 1 card in hand is Cavern of Souls. They are dead next turn if they don't have anything this turn. With the bolt. Okay, Sudden Edict seems pretty good against the Titan deck, as well as Emrakul. That's was kind of my thinking on Sudden Edict. I suppose I haven't really like talked too much about like why I chose to put Sudden Edict in the deck in the first place. I do think that there are more put my Emrakul into play decks that are becoming popular in Modern. Through the Breach, Indomitable Creativity, you know, stuff like that. I just wanted one answer to Emrakul, and it just like is like a solid removal spell, so not too big of a deal. Fatal Push is probably not too great. Lightning Bolt, not super great against the Dryad of the Elysian Groves. Abrupt Decay is fine. Cleansing Wildfire seems slightly better. I think Back to Nature could be interesting for the Dryads. So I think Cleansing Wildfire is probably better than Lightning Bolt. And then we'll just do something like this. And these will be fine for the Dryads. Oh wait. I already board in a card? Oh, Sudden Edict, right. Yeah. Is Fatal Push better or worse than Back to Nature? Back to Nature is slightly better if they have exactly 2 Dryads. Which could come up, I suppose. Fatal Push is better if they have Elvish Reclaimer. I think I'm going to go on the basis that they probably have Elvish Reclaimer over 2 Dryads. So we'll keep in the Fatal Push. I don't even necessarily think that Cleansing Wildfire is insane in this matchup. It's just like a solid card. It replaces itself. It destroys a Valakut, you know, stuff like that. So, if this was a fetch land, I'd probably keep this hand. If any one of these cards was a fetch land, I'd probably keep this hand, but it being a no lander, I don't think I can keep it. Well, we'll keep this one. Putting back. Just basic swamp. That's a good draw. So I'll go ahead and shock in the Blood Crypt, I think. And just Inquisition my opponent. Yeah. Just gonna fetch up a basic. No, I don't want to bet basic forest when I have Croaks in my hand. So we'll grab a Stomping Ground. And we'll focus on black sources. We'll get an Overgrown Tomb. Red, green. Play out my Wrenn and Six. Grab this fetch land. Your turn, sir. Ideally, we get to march this Wrenn and Six up and up and up and up and up, and they don't get to interact with us too much until Cleansing Wildfire just starts to take over the game by being recycled. So they played out Teleria West. I am going to take this Valakut off the table this turn. Hopefully we draw Fatal Push, Bauble. Let's Bauble ourselves here. Tourach. I definitely want a Tourach, even though I kind of want to pick up a fetch land with this Wrenn and Six. I think I'm okay with not doing that this turn. So they're on 4 cards. Oh, okay. So we have a Titan. Probably just dead to this. Which kind of stinks, but... I'll let them show me how many Valakuts they have in their deck, I suppose. They have 2 more Valakuts. But I'm not dead, technically. I am going to 1. Okay, now I am dead. I didn't really think about them having another land, but that's to be expected, I suppose. They're the deck that plays all of the lands that are going to have a land. So I think I'm going to board out one Cleansing Wildfire for a Fatal Push. I'm going to submit that. Perhaps even... yeah, perhaps even two. Because realistically, one of the only cards that matters is just killing the Dryad like on site. I will keep this hand. I know this hand seems somewhat questionable, but we always have mana to be picking up Lurrus. Things like that. Reason I chose to fetch in my main phase and not Bauble myself is because I don't have a green source to play anyway, so the decision doesn't really matter. Okay, I am going to spend this turn just buying Lurrus. Then next turn we get to start cycling through Baubles. Okay. Okay, that's good. Just gonna play out a Tarmogoyf. I know it has no power, but should have attacked with the Ignoble for one. But here we get to hold up fetch for Revolt. Cast Fatal Push. They're just gonna play a Titan though. Yep, that's super unfortunate for us. And I think we're just dead here to double amulet draw. Yep. So we're not just dead here. The only reason that I'm still playing realistically is if they somehow mess up with their pact, and then we get to double Cleansing Wildfire them off of lands available to pay for pact. So that's the only reason I'm still playing. I normally would have conceded here, but we're technically not dead because we get the Fatal Push the Dryad, so I'm gonna let them do their thing here where they... pretty close, actually. Just being a big enough power to block. We just need like a sorcery and an artifact. Just need a Bauble and a Inquisition. They did not choose to cast their... suppose we're not like, we're still not dead, is the thing. I get to wildfire this. And then I get to wildfire this. And like, yes, they have a pact. But now I have a 6/7 Tarmogoyf because I drew a Bauble. Okay, so we grabbed another Primeval Titan. Okay, yeah, the Bojuka Bog's likely going to kill us. So they've got instant land enchantment creature. Yeah, it's gonna make the Tarmogoyf real small. Yeah, I think I'll concede to the bog. I don't want to see them diddle around with their mana and stuff, but it's like relatively close. I mean, Wrenn and Six was kind of what I was hoping for in this particular game, because if there is a situation where we like the one situation where we get the claw back into this game is Wrenn and Sixing down the plants and then drawing Sudden Edict for the Titans, but you know, like we have to get to a stalemate where they're not attacking with Titans because my Tarmogoyfs are a 6/7, and obviously they have Bojuka Bog in their deck, so it's just like, you know, they're built to beat decks like ours, so. Yeah, you know, not the best league. 3-2 with Lurrus, Jund. Definitely not the best showing that I wanted to present to you guys. I was very impressed whenever I played with this deck the other day, and was not super great in those last two matchups. But, you know, we did lose against matchups where I would expect to lose. We can definitely build the deck to be better against burn. I don't know that there's like a very great way to be better against Amulet Titan. We probably need some number of engineered explosives. I did consider that while we were playing that match. And just having an engineered explosives to deal with one or even multiple amulets on one can be relevant. But it definitely feels like the metagame is shifting towards a few more artifacts. So perhaps we want some artifact removal in this deck. I don't think that Cleansing Wildfire is necessarily super great here anymore. Cleansing Wildfire never has really been very good against Valakut anyways. I've sort of boarded in, so obviously we have Break the Ice or whatever, I think is what it's called. Yeah, so obviously we have Break the Ice now for Tron. This card's very good. It's like fine against the, you know, you can still bring it in against the Titan decks, but it only destroys very specific targets. Cavern of Souls, Handwar Battlements, Slayer Stronghold, Sunhome. Like there's pretty few lands that this card actually destroys against the Titan decks. So I would only bring it in as like a, if you have nothing else to board in and you've got terrible cards in your main deck that you need to take out. In any case, so some number of these probably need to become Break the Ices. I don't actually think I want to play this card at all anymore. I just don't think that this effect is really what you want to be doing. Like giving your opponent a land in replacement for, you know, whatever land you're blowing up is usually just not good enough. It just sort of mitigates the problem, but eventually you still have to deal with whatever threat they're going to end up playing. It could probably cut down on 1 Unearth. I think Nile Spellbomb is fine as a 3 of. You still want some way to interact with these graveyard decks, even if you're playing Dauthi Voidwalker. I think this card's obviously a very good way to interact with graveyard decks. Just having it in the main deck, you just got a default way of interacting with them, but Nile Spellbomb is just a good secondary way of doing that. The Sudden Edicts felt pretty good. I mean, like, I bordered it in just about every matchup we played. It's just a random removal spell that is decent. Like I said, the Emrakul decks are becoming somewhat popular, so just having just this one way of like uncounterable, take your Emrakul off the table seems like relatively decent, you know? So I'm in on the 1 Sudden Edict. I don't think you want to play too many more than that. At most, I would play 2. Kozilek's Return I don't think is super necessary in this metagame, so I'll probably be boarding down on this. So like these are the 5 cards that I'd be taking out. I still think Back to Nature's like, it's like, you know, somewhere in the middle. It's just like a random removal spell for Dryad, which is okay. And then if you do play against the Enchantress deck, then it's obviously a blowout. But perhaps, you know, just playing like some number of Engineered Explosives is more correct, because it's more of a like an all-around answer, and it's also recursive with Lurrus. So that's probably the correct answer, is to do something like this, and then take this out, take these out, and then like... I don't want... whatever. Non-foils. Something like this. I guess this is only 14 cards. So then like... yeah, something like this. Maybe a Terminate or something for the Titans, if you feel like the Titan matchup is going to be popular. But you know, it's definitely close on what you want to do with this. You've got a lot of options to go with in a shell like this. I guess we talked about potentially bringing in something for burn, so maybe instead of the second Sudden Edict, you want another Collective Brutality or Weather the Storm or something like that. Weather the Storm is very, very good against traditional burn. So, and that's the only deck that I've played against on Magic Online so far. There hasn't been very many Prowess decks running around, just because I think most people are interested in trying something new, and Prowess was very, very popular before they released MH2. So everybody's kind of like, I don't want to touch Prowess for a little while. Let's just try something new. And we'll come back to Prowess at another time. So, super interesting deck. I wouldn't mind running this one back through another league, but I think I want to try something else out for now. So we're going to tuck this away for a little while, and we'll come back to it at another time. But I will save this list such that we can come back to it collectively later. But in any case, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will catch you guys later on YouTube. Be sure to check me out on twitch.tv if you want to catch a live one. Have a good one.